For those of us who are fans of Destiny today, it's hard to imagine what it might have been like had the game actually fulfilled every expectation Bungie had put into the consumers' heads. The game Bungie had showed us in their many reveals and Vidocs was despairingly far removed from the Destiny we received in the fall of 2015. Whatever storyline they might have had was glaringly gutted and twisted inside out and over again until what we got was a half-baked storyline with too little content to even remotely justify the $60 price tag attached to the game. And it gave us little hope in regards to the 2 expansions that were revealed in the Season Pass. By all accounts, the reception to Destiny prior to The Taken King was arguably abysmal, with numerous websites and communities giving the game a well-deserved thrashing in their reviews.
I suppose that's about as plausible as anything else, because you just kind of have to jump to your own conclusions and your own motivations because the game doesn't tell you, because there is no story. This little ghost thing might as well have just raised you and been like, I've been searching for you for a long time. I raised you from the dead. All right, now let's go farm for gear, because that's what we're going to do. Because that's really the point of the game. That's where the fun is, that you just farm for gear.
The half-baked nature of Destiny's RPG elements are just a symptom of a far larger issue.
You need my help, Guardian.
Destiny is straddling a border between too many kinds of experiences, and in its attempt to have something for everyone, it never fully satisfies on any one front.
There is zero build-up to the final mission here. And when you get there, the final stage is literally 3 of the exact same mini-boss. And a f***ing mini-boss that you already fought earlier in the game! No! No!
And even then, all The Taken King did was act as a pseudo Destiny 2 with some bonus content, a raid the polish and quality of Destiny's Vault of Glass, a few new story missions which admittedly were more interesting due to the inclusion of likable characters like Eris Morn in K6, and an appreciable amount of lore, though still hidden within the Grimoire and not explained in the game itself. As far as mechanics go, Destiny is a marvel of ergonomic satisfaction, with constant tweaks and patches to keep the game balanced as they released more and more content. But satisfying mechanics and patchwork updates does not a successful product make. The game failed to deliver on the story aspect, unless you were willing to dig deep into the mountains of out-of-game content within the Grimoire, or spend hours upon hours watching YouTube channels like Sir Wallen or My Name is Bife to get a firm grasp on what in the world is going on behind the scenes. But for as much as we like to rag on Destiny for its spectacular shortcomings and failure to meet expectations, for which it deserves most of its criticisms, mind you, I find myself contemplating how things might have gone had Destiny not been so poor on the outset. Now, it's easy to say that if a game was made with every aspect of itself at a perfect 100%, that it would have been a 10 out of 10 game. But that simple logic isn't fit to account for the many variable facets of the human nature. Well, now Blacklister, now you're just trying to sound smart. Yes I am. But that doesn't mean anything I've said is wrong. For instance, even your favorite game that you've ever played will eventually get boring. And people don't play games that they're bored of. In that way, your favorite game, whatever it is not a 10 out of 10 game, because it can't hold your attention indefinitely. In fact, there is no such thing as a perfect game. There's a best and a worst, that much is acceptable. There must always be an apex to any subject. But perfection is mired by subjectivity. For instance, you might think a certain movie or game is amazing, or a particular rock band is the perfect exemplar of what rock music should be. To any of these claims, I can simply say, well, I don't think so. And as soon as the words have left my mouth, your perfection would cease to exist. So let's take a scenario where Destiny released in as great a condition as it possibly could, the best case scenario. Would it have been as successful in such a state as to how it was actually released? The immediate answer that comes to mind is, yes, of course, why wouldn't it be? And you'd be justified in thinking so. I, however, disagree. For decades, game developers have released multitudes of MMO and MMO-like games of various different settings, mechanics, and complexities. And yet, of them all, most have ultimately failed to withstand the test of time. Note, I do mark MMOs that have gone free-to-play that were once pay-to-play as failed, because logically, if it hadn't failed, there'd be no need to switch to a more easily accessible model. Technical complexity, consistency of additional content, social interconnectivity, and the like are all aspects that must be considered during the design process, aggregating into a singular concept that all MMOs strive for: player retention. For an ordinary game, especially in today's day and age, once a consumer pays for a game, that's that. So long as it's not absolute garbage and gets returned and refunded, that purchase is money in the bag for the developer. However, with MMOs, the sale of the game becomes a bit trickier. In most cases, MMOs function on a pay-to-play system, meaning that in order to keep consumers consuming, that is, shell out the $15 or so a month to continue to play the game, you need to incentivize said player to keep on coming back. Generally, these incentives are expansions with enough content to keep the consumer satisfied until the next pack of content is ready to be released. However, Destiny does not function in such a manner. Destiny is a single purchase product that gives you everything within it, no subscription needed. Of course, there's the PSN or Xbox Live subscription, but none of that money goes to Bungie, so it's a moot point. To keep players coming back, Destiny employs an expansion system similar to most other MMOs, releasing a large amount of new content every few months to keep players returning. Assuming then that Destiny has had all perfectly satisfying expansions with just the right amount of content to keep the consumers retained, would Destiny be as strong as it is today? Well, the answer is probably not. I know it sounds illogical to say so, but there you are. The reason I believe this is because Destiny was an admittedly overhyped game that promised a lot and ended up delivering on almost none of it. Add to it, Bungie did not have a clue how to make an MMO. They couldn't even code gear drops properly. Yeah, how many of you remember purple engrams decoding into blues and greens, huh? Yeah, that was a thing. Destiny was their guinea pig, and a poorly birthed one at that. Destiny might have been a game that had a satisfying storyline, excellent content post-campaign, seamless multiplayer, and theatrical raids. But ultimately, I believe that would have left the player base wanting. A thoroughly satisfying game, to be sure, but if something is completely satisfying, is there any reason to keep coming back? Destiny's initial failures created something inside of us, something desperate. Granted, we did all spend $60 on the darn thing, or even more if you got the collector's edition. Perhaps we defiantly held on to Destiny, hoping it would eventually become the great game we dreamed of. Perhaps there were those of us who were determined to find those parts of the game that went above and beyond the expectations of its contemporaries. And we did. We found that faint light in the dark, and we clung to it, helplessly. I can't say for certain what it was for anyone, since psychologically, it was whatever we needed it to be to satisfy our id. And with every expansion, with the Dark Below and the House of Wolves, we came back. We came back because we wanted what we wanted, and we hoped those expansions would be what we wanted. But they weren't. No matter how you splice it, the Dark Below had an abysmally short campaign, with most of the levels being levels from vanilla, flipped backwards and saturated with Hive. I'm sure we got a few new strikes, a few new guns and gear, and that's it. House of Wolves didn't fare much better. Although with the House of Wolves, we got the advent of Trials of Osiris as the premier PvP activity, the lack of any longevic PvE put a damper in that part of the community. Sure, you could get cool Fallen exotics, but was it really worth the monotony of the Prison of Elders? Everything before The Taken King, which comprised Year 1 of Destiny, was disparagingly bleak and boring. But there was something about that black abyss that those of us who continued to play clung to for dear life and never let go. Here I am ragging on a game for its past faults, and rightfully so, yet I never once lost a complete interest in Destiny. Destiny, for me, became like EVE Online once was, a chronic disease. You're never fully 100% rid of the desire to return to them. You may no longer even know anyone in the game, but you still want to come back again and again and again and again. But the maddeningly inconceivable part is, I don't know why. Maybe it's that stubborn streak in me that said, no, I enjoy the lore, even if the game's garbage. Or, this expansion was horrible, but Bungie appears to be learning from their mistakes, so maybe the next one will be better. Perhaps it's as inevitable as a dog returning to its own vomit. You're welcome for that image. But I couldn't break away, and evidently many of you couldn't either. The overabundance of flaws made the community grip onto what little good there was to be found in the game. So much so that even after The Taken King and Rise of Iron were released, we forgot to let go. Destiny's horrifying launch sifted the chaff from the wheat. Those who would be either loyal or stupid enough to support the game through thick and thin, and those who were only after a certain experience that wasn't present in the game at the time. The game wasn't worthy of our love and dedication. It didn't deserve it, but we gave it anyway. From that crowd birthed a sense of dedication nigh unseen in other communities. In a way, we turned Destiny's dedicated community into a cult. One that, while aware of Destiny's shortcomings, still loved the game and its imperfect charm. And much like any proper religion, the spread of it comes from our overabundant honesty and enthusiasm about and for the universe of Destiny and its upcoming sequel. Perhaps there is no discernible reason why we stuck with Destiny. Maybe we'll never know just what it was that drew us to it, beyond disillusionment. By all accounts, the game wasn't worth either our time or effort, and yet, here we are. Maybe we'll never know what the game might be like today if it had been everything it had been promised to be. But I can say this for certain. Destiny is what it is today because we made it so. It was our experiences, our salty sweat and tears that brought about the game in the state it is now. Maybe conjecture is pointless. Maybe it doesn't matter what the game might have been like. All that matters now is what it will be. Let your voices be heard, Guardians. Bungie is listening, and together we will shape Destiny into a better game tomorrow than it ever was yesterday. My name is the Blacklister. Until next time, Guardians. Vae Lucius Ambulate.